Hey, all you cool cats and kittens, it's your favorite history teacher back at you again with another historical video. And today we are continuing our trend of nationalist movements, changes, all that jazz. Today we're going to be talking about the Middle East. So let's get into it. There are a lot of notes. Um, so. A lot of a lot. I mean, we're going from there's like 70 slides. So hopefully I can finish in the amount of time that I get free here on Zoom. So the Middle East, chapter 14, lesson 2. That was your warm up. Okay, objectives. We're going to draw conclusions about the Arab Israeli conflict. And then we're going to sequence information about the Iranian Revolution, the Iran-Iraq War, and Afghanistan. So let's get into it. So loading. In the Middle East, like in Asia and Africa, a number of newly independent states emerged after World War II. Syria and Lebanon gained their independence just before the war. Jordan, to their south, also achieved its complete self-rule soon afterward. And these new independent states were largely Muslim. So, as industry grew around the world, many nations began to rely on the Middle East for its oil resources. This would serve to put the region on center stage as an area of conflict during the Cold War. Lots of conflict. Countries within the region will use the circumstances of the Cold War to gain political, military, and economic benefits from either the US or Soviet Union, playing one superpower against the other. And one such event was Iran's nationalization of its oil industry after World War II, would play a role in conflicts resulting from the rising nationalism in the region. Again, nationalism, love for your country, pride for your country. So this is the world that was freed after World War II, World War One, with Egypt, right? Turkey falling apart, right? And you have Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, okay, Saudi Arabia. This was largely controlled by, obviously the British, and then what's this orange? What's this pink? Independent. So Turkey was independent, Iran, Saudi Arabia independent. France had Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, Syria. So all these places, right? So we're looking at these areas right here from that slide. Okay, and then these are the countries of oil production based on their area in the Middle East. So lots of oil comes from the Middle East, Central Asia. If you want to call it Western Asia, you know, sometimes it should be called that if I'm being honest. And these are where the major oil fields are, which bring a lot of wealth to these countries, primarily Saudi Arabia. But obviously, this is where oil can be found. And this is Mohammed Mossadegh for Iran. I think this is the day he nationalized it. All right, pushing peace. So, in the years between the two world wars, many Jews had immigrated to the Palestine Mandate, which was their historical homeland and religious center. Arab immigration to the Mandate also increased, and there will be tensions between Jews and Arabs intensified during the 1930s. After a massive Arab revolt that lasted from 1936 to 1939, Great Britain, who governed the region under the League of Nations mandate, decided to limit Jewish immigration into the area and rejected proposals for an independent Jewish state. The Zionist movement wanted the land of ancient Israel to be home for Jewish people and had begun building the institutions necessary for statehood. Many people had been shocked at the end of World War II when they learned about the deliberate killing of the 6 million European Jews in Nazi death camps. And as a result, sympathy for the Jewish cause grew. So so the British knew about the issues that were happening. These are pictures from that time period. So this was the Palestine Mandate in 1920. All of that. And then 1922, Jewish Palestine. And then it was the British Mandate of Palestine. Okay, if you didn't know, now you know. So in 1947, a United Nations General Assembly resolution called for the Palestine Mandate to be divided into a Jewish state and an Arab state. As British Palestine Mandate was to expire May 15th, 1948, David Ben-Gurion, a Zionist leader who became Israel's first prime minister, announced the establishment of the State of Israel May 14th of that year. The day before it expired, right? Around the same time, Arab nations, including Iraq, Syria, Jordan, Lebanon, areas in Turkey, ended their time as mandates and also gained independence. Arab states saw the creation of the State of Israel as a betrayal to the Palestinian Arabs and rejected the existence of a Jewish state. In response, 5 Arab countries invaded Israel. The invasion failed, but Arab states continued to refuse to recognize the State of Israel, leading to ongoing conflicts. As a result, thousands of Palestinians fled to neighboring Arab countries, as well as the Jordanian-ruled West Bank and Egyptian-ruled Gaza Strip. Many fled at the urging of Arab states who told them they could return to Israel. They could return after Israel was destroyed. But other Palestinians remained in Israel. Another result of the conflict was that hundreds of thousands of Jews in Muslim countries in the Middle East and North Africa were expelled. Most sought refuge in Israel. So these are the areas we're talking about. Gaza is right here. The West Bank is right here on the other side of the Dead Sea. So these were proposals in 1937. That's David Ben-Gurion. Bless me. And these are the territory. This is Gaza, right? Gaza Strip. And this is the West Bank. So, in Egypt, a new leader arose who played an important role in the Arab world. His name, Colonel Gamal Abdel Nasser, took control of the Egyptian government in the early 1950s. Nasser was strongly supported Arab nationalism, and he also opposed the existence of Israel. Nasser ordered a blockade of the Straits of Tiran to stop ships heading to Israel's southern port of Eilat and supported terrorist attacks on Israel. July 26, 1956, he seized the Suez Canal Company, which had been under British and French administration since the 1800s. Great Britain and France were upset by this threat to their world positions. Suez Canal, very important for trade, right? It's the whole reason why it was built. The Suez Canal was an important waterway linking the Mediterranean Sea to Asia. There you go. Great Britain and France decided to strike back against Egypt, and Israel quickly joined in. The 3 nations launched a joint attack on Egypt, starting the Suez War of 1956. That's Nasser. This is the Anglo-French invasion. The Suez Canal goes right through here, deploying some tanks. These guys wearing shorts? They look like they're wearing shorts. And here's some more pictures. I looked up pictures from the Suez War. All right, it's cold in the desert. So the US and USSR joined in supporting Nasser. Hmm. Just so you know, the US supported the creation of Israel. So this is a little flip-floppy, right? Both countries oppose British and French influence in the Middle East and will force Britain, France, and Israel to withdraw from Egypt. Nasser emerged from the conflict as a powerful leader, so he began to promise Pan-Arabism or Arab unity. February 1958, Egypt formally united with Syria in the United Arab Republic, UAR. Nasser was named its first president. Egypt and Syria hoped the union would eventually include all Arab states. Pan-Arabism. Many other leaders were suspicious of Pan-Arabism. Oil-rich Arab states were concerned that they would have to share their revenues with the poorer states in the Middle East. They don't want to share. However, in Nasser's view, Arab unity meant that wealth derived from oil, which currently flowed free into Arab states or foreign interests, could be used to improve the standard of living throughout the Middle East, not just in that particular country. But in 1961, Syrian military leaders took over Syria and withdrew its country from the UAR. But Nasser continued to work on behalf of Arab interests. So this is the United Arab Republic in orange. I think that was their flag. Okay, and this is, if you're like, what are you talking about? A majority of Arab-speaking peoples live in Southwestern Asia, the Middle East, and Northern Africa, a majority, right? This dark green is a majority speak Arabic, and then the minority still speak Arabic. So a lot of Arab-speaking peoples in and around here. That is the military. This is the military leader takeover. It is not one single person. This guy is just announcing that the military is taking over Syria, hence why he's in front of a microphone. All right, Middle East powder keg. So during 56, 57, tensions between Arab states and Israel will increase. 1967, Nasser again imposed a blockade against Israeli shipping and made speeches publicly threatening Israel. In quote, he said, "We are now ready to confront Israel. We are now ready to deal with the entire Palestine question." He stated in other speeches that Egypt was ready to enter a general war with Israel, and our basic objective is to destroy Israel. Well, I mean, if you're saying this stuff out loud, some people aren't going to like it. Even as he gave these speeches in spring 1967, Arab armies began massing in Syria, Jordan, and Egypt near Israel's borders. So, fearing attack by Egypt and other Arab states on June 5th, 1967, Israel launched airstrikes against Egypt and destroyed most of Egypt's air force. When Jordan joined the war, Israel responded again with airstrikes. It's called the Six-Day War, and the Israeli army broke through the blockade, defeated Arab forces, and took control of Gaza and the Sinai Peninsula from Egypt. The army also took the West Bank and East Jerusalem from Jordan and the Golan Heights from Syria, tripling the size of its territory under its control. As a result, 1 million Palestinians now lived under Israeli control, most on the West Bank. Following this war, Israel proposed the return of Sinai and the Golan Heights and to begin negotiations on the status of Gaza and the West Bank in exchange of Arab recognition of Israel and its right to exist. That's what they want. That's all they want. In the wake of severe defeat and high casualties suffered, the Arab states responded with the Khartoum Resolution. No peace with Israel, no recognition of Israel, no negotiations with Israel. That's a hot take. You know, after losing all the land, and you're in these countries still refuse to recognize Israel. That's how big of a deal this was. So these are the areas of armies that were about to attack Israel. And then Israel, I looked up Israel airstrikes. This is a picture I found. So Israel said, nah, you're not going to do that. So they invade in East Jerusalem right here. This is the West Bank again. And then this is the Sinai Peninsula, which is owned and controlled. It is Egypt. So, yeah. And so this is Israel, right? And then this peach color is what they took control of after the Six-Day War. So you have the Golan Heights right here, the West Bank, Gaza, Sinai Peninsula. Before the war, after the war. Israel literally tripled in size. Over the next few years, Arab states continued to demand the return of the West Bank and Gaza. Nasser died in 1970, and Anwar el-Sadat succeeded him. On October 6, 1973, it's Yom Kippur, Judaism's holiest day of the year. Egypt and Syria launched a coordinated surprise attack against Israel. Golda Meir, Israel's first female prime minister, had little time to mobilize troops. However, Israeli forces went on the offensive and will push into Egypt. A UN negotiated ceasefire on October 22nd stopped the fighting, and an agreement in 1974 officially ended the conflict, but tensions still remained. Meanwhile, the war was having indirect results on Western nations. In 1960, oil-producing states formed OPEC, which is the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. During the Yom Kippur War, some OPEC nations announced large increases in the price of oil to foreign countries. These price hikes, coupled with cuts in oil production, led to oil shortages and serious economic problems in Western European countries and North America. That's Anwar al-Sadat. That's Golda Meir. This is pictures from the Yom Kippur War. This is a map of the Yom Kippur War. These are the countries in OPEC. Well, I want to say these were the founding countries in OPEC. So you wouldn't think Venezuela is one, but Venezuela has oil. What I think OPEC is technically like a legal cartel, if you think about it. So this is their sign, and these are pictures from the gas shortages, oil shortages in America, as you can see. Sometimes well, they rationed oil on certain days. So like kind of like how there's water rationing going on in California, right? If you're an odd number house, you water on like Mondays and Wednesdays. If you're an even number house, you can water on Tuesday, Thursday, or something like that, you know? Same here, but you know, sometimes people need gas. Can you imagine that today? Ooh, with all the commuting. I might have to ride a bike to school. Camp in peace. So, 1977, U.S. president at the time, Jimmy Carter, began to press for a compromise between Arabs and Israelis. September 1978, Carter met with President Sadat of Egypt and Israeli Prime Minister Menachem Begin at Camp David in the U.S. The result was called the Camp David Accords, an agreement to sign an Israeli-Egyptian peace treaty. The treaty signed by Sadat and Begin in March 79 led, not lead, to a complete Israeli withdrawal from the Sinai Peninsula and ended the state of war between Egypt and Israel. However, many countries continue to refuse to recognize Israel. So that's Jimmy Carter. Ahead of his time, that's Sadat, and that's Begin. Here's them at Camp David having a laugh, shaking hands. So Sinai would be returned, but not the Golan Heights or West Bank. Arabs and Israelis. So in 64, the Egyptians led in the forming of the Palestine Liberation Organization to represent Palestinian interests. The PLO believed that only Palestinian Arabs should have a state in Palestine region and called for the destruction of Israel. At the same time, a guerrilla movement called Al-Fatah, headed by PLO political leader Yasser Arafat, began to launch attacks on Israel. These terrorist attacks continued for decades. In the 80s, Palestinian Arabs, frustrated by their failure to achieve self-rule, grew more militant. This militancy led to a movement called an intifada, or uprising, concentrated on the territories controlled by Israel since the 1967 Arab-Israeli War. Eventually, the Oslo Accords in 1993, an interim agreement for future negotiations, Israel and that should be PLO, agreed that the establishment of a Palestinian Authority of the West Bank, they would exercise autonomy. In return, the PLO recognized Israel and renounced terrorism. Go Raider. The conflict between Israel and the Palestinians is one of the many challenges in the Middle East. As in other parts of the world, a few people are rich while many are poor. Some countries prosper because of oil, but others remain in poverty. Response to these problems is the growth of movements based on Islam. Many of these groups believe that Muslims must return to a pure Islamic culture and values to build prosperous societies. Some are willing to use violence to bring about an Islamic revolution. So you have an Iranian Revolution under the leadership of Mohammad Mossadegh. Iran nationalized its oil industry, which meant foreign oil companies, many of them British, lost their control of Iran's oil. The international community was alarmed, and Mossadegh was overthrown in a coup in 1953, led by the CIA. The rule of the Shah, Reza Shah Pahlavi, was restored, and revenues from oil helped make Iran a rich country. However, there was much opposition to the Shah in Iran. Many Muslims looked with distaste at Iranian society. In their eyes, it was based on greed and materialism, which they identified with American influence. Leading with the opposition to the Shah was the Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini, a member of the Muslim clergy. In the late 1970s, many Iranians had begun to respond to Khomeini's words. In 1979, the Shah's government collapsed and was replaced by the Islamic Republic. Although Iran had been a Shia-controlled nation for centuries, the emergence of the state, led by Shia clergy, increased regional tensions. There are two different forms. I mean, I wouldn't say there are two different forms, but there are two main forms of Islam in the Middle East. You have the Shia and the Sunni. So that's Mohammad Mossadegh. This is the Shah. I looked up the word Shah. Shah is the word for king or a monarch. And this is the Ayatollah Khomeini. Ayatollah is another name given to represent imams in the Muslim clergy. Hostage crisis. So a new government led by Ayatollah Khomeini moved to restore Islamic law. Supporters of the Shah were executed or fled Iran. Anti-American feelings erupted when militants seized 52 Americans in the U.S. Embassy in Tehran and held them hostage for more than a year. It's called the Iran hostage crisis. Since the revolution, Iran has been shunned by many international community. In the international community and the majority of their neighbors in the Middle East, after Khomeini's death in 1989, a more moderate government allowed some civil liberties. Iranians were dissatisfied with the government's poor economic performances. Others, especially young people, pressed for more freedoms and an end to conservative rule by Muslim critics, conservative Muslim critics. So this is Khomeini. This is Iran hostage crisis. All right, Persian cake. So to the west of Iran was a militant and hostile Iraq, led by one Saddam Hussein since 1979. Iran and Iraq have had a long and uneasy relationship. Religious differences have fueled their disputes. Although Iran and Iraq are both Muslim countries, Iranians are mostly Shia Muslims, and the Iraqi leaders under Saddam Hussein were mostly Sunni Muslims. Iran and Iraq have fought over territory too, especially over the Strait of Hormuz. Strategically important, the strait connects the Persian Gulf to the Gulf of Oman. In 1980, Saddam Hussein launched a brutal war against Iran. During the Iran-Iraq War, children were used to clear dangerous minefields. Saddam Hussein used poison gas against soldiers and civilians, especially the Kurds. an ethnic minority in the north who wanted their own state. In 1988, Iran and Iraq signed a ceasefire without resolving the war's basic issues. In 1990, Saddam Hussein sent his troops across the border to seize Kuwait, an oil-rich country in the Persian Gulf. This invasion started the Persian Gulf War. The U.S. led international forces that would free Kuwait, hoping an internal revolt would overthrow Hussein. The Allies imposed harsh economic sanctions on Iraq. And this overthrow of Saddam Hussein did not happen. That's a young Saddam Hussein. This is a representation of Sunni Muslims in green or in light green, and in dark green, Shia Muslim. Again, a map of a majority of Sunni Muslims. A majority of the Arab-speaking world are Sunni Muslims, and then Shia Muslims are like in Iraq, mostly Iran, some parts of Afghanistan. Okay, here are pictures of those wars. And this is the Iran-Iraq War. This is kind of fighting over uranium. Uranium's used to make nuclear weapons. So, Persian Gulf War. Mujahideen evolution. So after World War II, the king of Afghanistan, in search of economic assistance for his country, developed close ties with the Soviet Union. Internal fighting followed in the 1979 by a full-scale invasion of Afghanistan by the Soviet Union, who occupied the country for 10 years. Anti-communist Islamic forces called the Mujahideen, supported by the U.S. and Pakistan, eventually ousted the Soviets. When the Soviets left, Islamic groups began to fight for control of Afghanistan. One of these groups, called the Taliban, seized control of Kabul in 1996. By the end of the fall of 1998, the Taliban controlled two-thirds of the country. Backed by conservative religious forces in Pakistan, the Taliban provided a base of operations for one Osama bin Laden. Bin Laden came from a wealthy family in Saudi Arabia and used his wealth to support Afghan resistance. In 1988, bin Laden founded al-Qaeda, which recruited Muslims to drive Westerners out of nations with a largely Muslim population. After the Taliban seized control of much of Afghanistan, bin Laden used bases there to train al-Qaeda recruits. That's the king of Afghanistan. Had to look that up. These are the rebel forces fighting the Soviets, called the Mujahideen. We supported them. And this is Osama bin Laden. That's Osama bin Laden. All right. In recent years, conservative religious forces in the Middle East have tried to replace foreign culture and values with Islamic forms of belief and behavior. This movement is called Islamic fundamentalism or Islamic activism. For some Islamic leaders, Western values and culture are based on materialism, greed, and immorality. Extremists wanted to remove all Western influence in Muslim countries. These extremists gave Westerners an unfavorable impression of Islam. Islamic fundamentalism began in Iran under the Ayatollah. There, the return to traditional Muslim beliefs reached into clothing styles, social practices, and its legal system. These ideas and practices spread to other Muslim countries. For example, in Egypt, militant Muslims assassinated President Sadat in 1981. This is the assassination. The guy just walked up and began fighting. Women. So at the beginning of the 20th century, women's place in Middle Eastern society had changed little for hundreds of years. Early Muslim women had participated in political life of society and had extensive legal, political, and social rights. Cultural practices in many countries had overshadowed those rights, however. In the 19th and 20th century, Muslim scholars debated the surrounding of women's roles in society. Many scholars argued the need to rethink outdated interpretations and cultural practices that prevented women from realizing their potential. Until the 1970s, the general trend in urban areas was toward a greater role for women. Beginning in the 1970s, however, there was a shift toward more traditional roles for women, especially noticeable in Iran. So this was women, how they were perceived, right? These are Muslim women, and they saw American influence, and leaders in those countries did not like that. And so the common Change of how women should be dressed in public changed during this time as well. And yeah, that's going to conclude our long and extensive, um, long and extensive lecture. That was, I know that was really long. There's a lot of notes. I sped through it, and we're probably not. I didn't get to expand on anything. So that was a lot. So I don't hate you. I'm not trying to hurt your hand or whatever taking these notes. But anyways, uh, hopefully you guys did enjoy that. Your homework is to do page 526, 2 through 4. 526, 2 through 4. All right. Hopefully you guys did enjoy that. I certainly had fun looking these slides up and finding out more information, just becoming well-rounded of, you know, learning why the Middle East, the Southwestern Asia is the way it is. And it stems from a lot of it stems from the foundation and creation of Israel. But yeah, here you go. There you go. Lots of tension in the Middle East. So, all right. Hopefully, you guys did enjoy that. If you did, make sure you hit that like button, leave a comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Burst.